April 28th, 9 o'clock. I heard this loud ruckus. I heard a loud voice bark out, FBI, come out with your hands up. Had 6 or 7 guns pointed right at me.
FBI, come out with your hands up!
Since January 6th, the Biden administration has launched the biggest and most technologically sophisticated manhunt in American history. They've described it as a shock and awe campaign against our own people.
And our office wanted to ensure that there was shock and awe, that we could charge as many people as possible.
Shock and awe. Sound familiar? It means that some of the same veterans who kicked in doors to find al-Qaeda terrorists are now having their doors kicked in by the same government that sent them to risk their lives in Iraq and Afghanistan. Facial recognition software, online sentiment analysis tools, old-fashioned snitching. All of the Orwellian methods employed by the surveillance state in the war on terror, now used to track down and purge American war veterans, law enforcement officers, and any journalists who asked the wrong question. It took a decade for the federal government to find Osama bin Laden. They can find you a lot faster. They likely already have. According to reporting by The Intercept, the CIA is now funding 38 separate companies to identify and spy on social media posts whose opinions the Biden administration disagrees with. Once you're identified as a, quote, extremist, information about you winds up in a government database called Main Core. At this point, your life can change quickly. On April 28, 2021, federal agents launched a pre-dawn raid on the home of Paul and Marilyn Huper in Homer, Alaska. That's a small coastal village over 200 miles from Anchorage. This is what happened next.
Homer, Alaska. Tales from the end of the road. Highway 1 starts in Key West and ends in Homer. This is as far away as you can get from the lower 48, which is a lot of our goal.
We feel a lot more freedom here. Fishing and hunting, kayaking, bear viewing, and all of that. It's a great place to live, great community, about 10,000 people total. Ultra-conservative to ultra-liberal, and we get along. We make it work. Good people.
We have a very small property called Homer Inn and Spa.
We try to cultivate a space that has peace.
FBI!
That peace was shattered at around 9 o'clock in the morning when armed federal agents stormed their home. The Hupers are not international terrorists. They're not dangerous gang members. They're Trump voters. On January 6, 2021, they were in Washington at a peaceful, constitutionally protected political rally.
It really felt like it was a violation of our space, definitely, to have people barge in uninvited. You know, we gladly would have sat down and had a cup of tea with them and went, okay, what do you need? You don't have to tear my door down. You don't have to terrorize me with guns and handcuffs and all of that.
I turn around, they cuffed me with my hands behind my back and put me in a chair.
Initially, they would not present a search warrant.
And then we asked, what is this about?
What are you doing inside my house with guns and handcuffs?
It never occurred to me they would actually think we had anything to do with anything inside the Capitol, because we never made it inside the Capitol.
But we really just wanted our voices to be heard. We wanted to be a part of something historical. 1 million patriots all gathered together.
Let's do it. We'll be good Americans and we'll go to a rally.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building.
The call had been to go stand at the Capitol so they'd know we were watching the decisions they made.
And we managed to get lost on the way to the Capitol. There were police cars and riot control cars and all of that heading up Constitution Avenue.
But what we saw was tons of people hanging out, kind of wondering what's happening because there was no cell coverage. We were mentioning to some people like, hey, it looks like we missed the party. And they're like, oh no, you can go in. Just get in that line there, follow those people. See, they're heading on in and they're just letting anybody who wants in. And I was like, that doesn't sound right.
And sure enough, you can see kind of a line snaking up. There were no police stopping anybody at all. It was like an open invitation just to walk right into the Capitol. Didn't feel right. We chose not to.
It felt totally like some kind of setup was being made.
Their instincts were right. It was a setup.
I had been hearing that the FBI had been contacting people who had been at DC and that people had been feeling threatened and interrogated by them. But I definitely felt in threat of them hauling me away to somewhere in DC and me never coming out again. They wouldn't let us make a phone call. They refused to let me examine the warrant. And then the main agent who was questioning me, he said, "We have footage of you all over the Capitol that day." And even inside Nancy Pelosi's office, they said, "Well, we're looking for Nancy Pelosi's laptop. We're here for Nancy Pelosi's laptop."
Of course, she didn't have it because she never went inside the Capitol building. They had the wrong person.
And then he showed me a photo, a distant fuzzy photo, profile of a woman in a hallway in the Capitol. And I was just like, is that who you think I am? Can we both see that this is two different people? He said, "Do you want me to put in my report that you lied to a federal agent?" And grabbed the paper and left again and went back to searching. They took my laptop and then they took a little tiny copy of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution.
This is how the government sees you.
Domestic violent extremism.
They seize my copy of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. They seize that as evidence against me. What is that saying?
Terrorism from white supremacy is the most lethal threat to the homeland today.
If you got a copy of those rights, you're considered to be an extreme radical today.
We still may have charges coming down. Our house may be bugged.
Not Al-Qaeda, white supremacists.
I know a friend said there were a couple FBI agents taping my husband at the coffee shop, recording his phone conversations, and they challenged him and told him to leave. So they just make up evidence or they make up cases. I mean, there's a history of that, especially with people who appear to be Trump supporters or with Trump himself. Trump tweeted once, "They don't hate me, they hate you, I'm just in the way." Now, the real agenda of coming after the people is becoming more apparent.
Move! There are millions of Americans, almost all white, almost all Republicans, who need to be deprogrammed.
It is a purge aimed at legacy Americans.
How are we going to really almost deprogram these people who have signed up for the cult of Trump?
Purge of inconvenient citizens who vote the wrong way.
What someone on my team earlier today called de-Bathification.
In the first war on terror following the American invasion of Iraq, the so-called de-Bathification of Iraqi society began.
The hunt is on.
We occupied their capital.
Tonight in Washington, D.C., a green zone perimeter has been established.
We hunted down supporters of the former Iraqi regime.
The National Guard scouring for explosives and extremists.
We purged their military and their law enforcement agencies and all public supporters of the former regime. The new Secretary of Defense ordered the entire U.S. military to, quote, stand down while investigators cleansed the ranks of political extremists. We threatened to do the same to anyone we identified as part of the axis of evil.
Unholy alliance of religious extremists, authoritarians, fascists, even libertarians.
Nothing like this has ever taken place on American soil until now.
Legislators around the country have already begun attempting to weed out extremism within the ranks of law enforcement.
Fire, you're cold. No misses.